Back in August, I made a video on why I thought Onana would help Man United get back to winning ways. It's safe to say that that video hasn't aged well. So far this season, Onana has struggled to get settled, and Ten Hag hasn't been able to exploit his trademark offensive positioning. But the issues with Man United go well beyond the goalkeeper, and it seems as if every time they fix one problem, another one emerges. Whilst they have shown glimpses of promise, there's certainly a lot of room for improvement, and in today's video we're going to be dissecting why I think Man United are struggling to win games. Let's take a look. Welcome back to Football Meta. Quick announcement before we get started, the first video on my second channel is live. The coachbook is dedicated to training principles and will feature more expert opinions from the world of football. Please go subscribe and let me know what you think of the new format in the comments down below. A big thank you to everyone for making this possible. After an early exit in the League Cup, sitting bottom of their Champions League group, and inconsistent results in the Premier League, Erik Ten Hag has struggled to build on their relatively successful previous season. It's easy to look around and blame their underperformance on the various issues surrounding the club, whether it's the changing room drama, the ownership issues, or the injuries to key players. But let's take a look at the statistics to see what's really happening on the pitch. All these stats are provided by Soccerman's X-Value platform. By comparing Man United's current statistics in 8 key metrics, we can quickly notice a few differences in play style compared to last season. Firstly, they're completing fewer shots per match, with a lower XG per 90, but also a reduction in shot quality. However, the biggest difference in chance creation comes from chances created from counterattacks. Last season, Man United created the most chances than any other team from counters, whilst this season it hasn't been something they've been able to exploit, currently ranking 15th. The second biggest difference is this big increase in the amount of crosses per match. Last season, Man United ranked first for through balls per 90, indicating a more direct and vertical approach. However, this season, with a slight shift towards a more possession-oriented system, there's been a big increase in crosses and cutbacks. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. However, to understand why it might not be working for them just yet, let's dissect some of the issues. The formation has remained the 4-2-3-1 across both seasons, but Man United have attempted to switch to a more build-up oriented style of play. However, while Onana is completing slightly fewer long balls compared to De Gea, it's definitely not as big a shift as expected. In pre-season, we noticed a change in structure. Onana was being used more aggressively, acting as an extra centre-back, with one defender occupying a position in midfield and creating an overload. However, during the season, this is rarely the case, and Onana's positioning has been more traditional in nature, being used to rotate possession, but not pushing forward as often as possible. From goal kicks, the most common pattern is with the fullback in a deep connected position, with the centre-backs either side of the 6-yard box. As they take the goal kick, one centre-back pushes slightly further up to drag away the pressure, and open up a passing route into the fullback. The main idea with this rotation is that the fullback can then draw in the pressure, and free up space for a ball into the winger who can lay it off in midfield. But in reality, this is a very hard move to execute, and the majority of the time, Man United end up with an isolated player in their corner. Here's an example from their recent game against Copenhagen in the Champions League. Maguire plays it into Onana, Varane pushes forward, freeing a passing lane into Wan-Bissaka. This move does create space between the lines, but it's not an easy pass to make, and more often than not, they end up losing possession in this area. While there's nothing inherently wrong with having width in the first phase of build-up, this is something all the teams in the top 4 have slowly moved away from. For example, if we look at Man City's build-up, a common structure from this season is a 2-2, with the fullbacks already in a much more offensive position. This is because Man City want to progress centrally, and by keeping this central overload, it forces the opposition to compact their shape, eventually freeing space for the fullbacks. This means that while both Manchester clubs use their fullbacks in build-up, Man United will engage them much earlier, while Man City look to do this closer to midfield. Here's an example from Man City in their match against Man United. We see this box shape in the centre, but the fullbacks are not even being picked up by the cameras. As they move up, we can see how their positioning is much further up the pitch, and their first involvement is near the halfway line. But even during more active build-up, this more spread out positioning of the back line means the players in possession often have fewer choices for moving the ball away from pressure. Whilst they start with a double pivot, during build-up one holding midfielder will push further up the pitch, leaving Casemiro as the central option and freeing up space for one centre-back to move inside. But as the centre-back pushes up, given that the fullback is in a deeper position, the only option for the centre-back on the ball is to pass it sideways, which is a trigger for the opposition to press, often forcing Man United even further back or back to Onana. Here's an example from their game against Newcastle in the League Cup. Lindelof lays it off into Maguire and picks up a position in midfield. This means Maguire now has few options, either a ball back to Onana, a sideways pass to Dalot, or a risky ball forward into this space, which is very dangerous as if they lose possession, Newcastle would have all the space to attack. He decides to lay it off to Dalot, who is instantly closed down and forced back to Onana. And now the whole back line is spread out. The two centre-backs are in midfield, and Casemiro has dropped into this space. The issue is made even worse as no player in the centre is giving Onana an option. If Lindelof dropped deep, it would at least provide the option of a third-man pass back to Dalot, who would then be able to find Maguire. As a result, Onana is forced long, and United lose possession. In comparison, here's a very similar situation from Brighton's recent Europa League match against Ajax. As the ball is played into the keeper, notice how the midfielder is coming much deeper to give him an option. And even though all these players are marked, the keeper at least has the alternative of a third-man pass to the free player, and the distances between the players is much shorter. Finally, with the centre-backs rotating forward, this often leaves the fullback with no support. If the centre-back always pushes up when he passes it to the fullback, then with a pretty standard press from the opposition, he will always be forced back to the keeper or to play risky passes, and will have less space to move it forward. In this clip, Evans plays it into Lindelof, and then rotates forward. But by doing this, all he's done is block off the space for a pass into his own teammate. If, for example, Evans plays it and then stays in support, Lindelof can play it back, or has more space to play it in between Man City's players and find Amrabat with the layoff. The advantage that Man City and Brighton have by keeping their fullbacks slightly further up the pitch is that they always have the option to pass it backwards if they're caught on the flanks. And the close proximity between the players means there's always a solution to get out of the pressure. Now, this isn't to say that Man United are never able to build from the back, and these rotations do often create space in midfield for them to move forward. But even when entering the opposition's half, there are other issues that seem to plague their attacking threat. Once Man United enter the opposition's half, their rotations usually mean their structure resembles a 2-1-4-3. The centre-backs and one holding mid in the centre, with the other holding mid pushing up next to Bruno Fernandes, and the fullbacks stretching the pitch on each side. This means they have good support on each flank and can create these triangles out wide for quick passing combinations. Furthermore, with the wingers moving centrally, it also creates 2v1 situations against the opposition's fullback, and one of the reasons as to their increase in the amount of crosses, as when their attacks work, they can often free up a player on the flank. A lot of the time, Man United will also look to play on the second ball, going directly into the striker, who can then knock it down into this space between the lines. However, the main issue around these interactions is mostly the timing of the runs in behind. Time and time again, when Man United have the ball in a position where they can play it forward, the runs from deep positions seem to be out of sync with the rest of the move. In order for a run in behind to cause an issue, it needs to be done when the other defenders are preoccupied with other players. For example, something Arsenal do very well is by having their wingers stretch the defence, and having two players in the half spaces, they are outnumbering the defensive line with 5 players. And so these runs in behind cause more issues for the defenders, as they need to choose which player to stop marking to cover this run. What Man United struggle to do is effectively free up a player that can be played in behind, and a lot of the time, the runs from Fernandes, Mount or McTominay are easily absorbed by the defender. In this clip from their game against Crystal Palace, Man United progressed down the right flank. Once Dalot receives the ball and is ready to play it in behind, the 3 United players start their run. But the issue is these runs can easily be covered by the 3 Palace defenders, and Man United's positioning is slightly off. In my opinion, it would be more dangerous if Pelistri is hugging the touchline, and Hojlund is the striker, so needs to be in a more central position, as he's the player you want to finish the chance, not create the chance. This would leave a slightly bigger gap between the 2 defenders for Fernandes to run through. This next clip is an example of this gap, again on the right flank, but this time Pelistri is wide and Hojlund is further away, leaving a bigger gap for Fernandes to run into. As Pelistri lays it off, the space was there for Fernandes to attack, but instead he decides to drop deep. He does play an excellent ball forward, but it would have been a difficult chance to create as United are now in a 3v2. Now at times they are able to find the right structure. For example, with this chance that Hojlund had against Crystal Palace, with 4 players stretching the backline and Fernandes and Hojlund being ready for the ball in behind, given that there are much bigger gaps between the players. Runs from a deeper position can be an extremely dangerous way of attacking, but the difficulty lies in finding the right moment to do so. As a comparison, let's consider the role of Jude Bellingham with Real Madrid. In his position as the central attacking midfielder, he often completes runs in behind from a deeper position. But his decision making on when to make these runs makes a big difference. As we saw from a recent analysis we did on his position, he comes short on attacks in behind depending on what is needed, and is very effective at recognizing the gaps left by his teammates. Take this run against Barcelona. As the ball shifts out to the left, he only starts his run once the fullback has stepped out, and as the centre-backs have been drawn in by Vinicius Jr.'s position, leaving a big gap for him to run into. Finally, it wouldn't be a complete analysis without considering their defensive issues, and by far the biggest cause of goals conceded is not dealing with crosses. Man United's press is definitely not the issue, ranking in the top 3 for build-up disruption percentage and gegenpressing intensity. However, if teams are able to break through the first wave of pressure, then Man United have seriously struggled to deal with balls into the box. As Man United fall back into their own half, their defensive structure is a 4-1-4-1. This gives the team good central cover and makes it difficult for teams to progress down the middle, as there is always a player protecting the space between the lines. However, if teams move it quickly out wide, when United drop deep into their box, it suddenly becomes difficult for the holding midfielder to cover these areas in front of defence. They've conceded a lot of scrappy goals with the centre-backs not dealing with it effectively, but by far their biggest weakness has been the space in front of the defence and on the edge of the box. On multiple occasions, whether it's players dribbling inside and finding space in this area to cross or shoot, or with cutbacks from deeper positions, these are the situations United are struggling with the most, often caused by the 4 offensive players not getting back in time to compensate for these gaps. Despite the difficulties Man United are currently facing, the season still has a very long way to go, and there's time for Ten Hag to find some consistency. And now let me know, what do you think the main issue with Man United is, and what do they need to change in order to pick up their form? Leave your thoughts in the comments down below. If you enjoyed this video, then remember to check out the coach book for even more football content. Thanks for watching.